the PS6 might be closer than we think, because there are now leaks and rumors going around, so I think it's worth keeping in mind that we're going to be in the rumor mill for a little while, or at least for the next year or so. So given that the Switch 2 was the last console platform to actually release, we now have the news around the PS6. I think for Xbox there has been rumors murmuring around since the Activision acquisition, but that feels like it was so long ago to the point where, I feel like that's kind of glossed over, and now we're looking at whatever the heck is happening on the PlayStation side. So, hardware leaker Moore's Law is dead, so he has leaked information about hardware previously. Outed specs for the PS5. Okay, no, it actually mentions it here about the PS5 Pro. Claims to have seen an internal AMD presentation from 2023 that includes a ton of potential information about the PS6. So, obviously, work on the PS6 began a long time ago, at least a couple of years for sure, but that doesn't change the fact that it takes time to make a new console. And so, given that the PS5 and Xbox series of consoles came out in 2020, for the new console to be basically started at around 2022 to 2023 sounds about right. And for us to not see it until closer to 2027, again, timeline-wise, it does feel right. Normally, or at least at this point, console cycles have run for around 6 to 7 years, relatively speaking. The initial console cycle was probably, especially with the PS1, I say initial cycle because it didn't feel like a cycle, especially with the amount of competition that was happening for the first 7 to 8 generations of the console, and then we get the 9th generation of consoles with the PS1. So I guess with that being said, we're kind of going off of from that point, especially if you've been around for a long ass time and have been console gaming well into the 70s and 80s, then you'll probably understand that I'm not going to go that far back. But for what we know as the more sort of modern interpretation of console generations, going from as little as 5 years to as much as 7 or so years at this point. And I think with the PS4 and Xbox One releasing in 2013, only for us to get the new consoles in 2020, 7 years sounds about right. But yeah, so basically, Moore's Law is dead, clarifies multiple times throughout a video that he made, which is this one right here, that specs were accurate as of 2023, so there is also a lot of possibility that things can change over time, and that's very, very true. When you're making something like this, it does take time to make, and ultimately, things can change. The introduction of AI, for example, within basically the entire world, like everyone is now looking at the use of generative AI, and how that's probably going to play a part in the upcoming console generation. That is, if it sticks, similar to like how, or not rather similarly, but like how we had stuff like NFTs that didn't stick, and then there was another thing that happened that also didn't stick tech-wise, and now we're staring down the face of AI, so that's like now the new tech thing. If it sticks around long enough, it could very well posture itself in that sort of position. But yeah, so assuming that if it's all accurate and all that, it's probably gonna be a decent representation, or at least a good representation from what was shown during that 2023 presentation by AMD. Now, supposedly, the system could enter manufacturing as soon as mid-2027. So, man, when could that potentially release? End of 2027? November time-ish sounds about right. So I feel like if we're going down that part, it could probably be about as much, yeah. If manufacturing does enter as soon as 2027, like the device goes into being manufactured at that point. So yeah, and of course Sony working on a rumored handheld for a while. That's actually an interesting point, because I've very much been looking forward to seeing what this potential handheld is going to be. But it very much feels like it's just going to be a portable PC style handheld that's going to be playing PS5 games, with a possible potential of playing PS6 games. But I feel like I'm getting a little bit too ahead of myself there in that sense. So actually, you know what? Looking at it now, from the stuff that we've talked about so far, being that possible leaks from the 2023 presentation being one aspect of what we could potentially get from the PS6, but above all else, the idea that if they do finally hit production and start manufacturing mid-2027, is the end of 2027 actually a viable release date in that sense? Because I really do kind of wonder where that's going to fall in. Is generative AI potentially going to fall in and actually be a part of the console itself? Like this, a bunch of information here that it kind of goes into. Oh, okay, so now here we kind of get the specs and numbers. So basically, from what we at least kind of know from the alleged 2023 presentation, is that the PS6 is going to have 8 Zen 6 or later cores, 40 to 48 R plus RDNA, 5 compute units at 3 gigahertz. Wait, hold on, is that 3 gigahertz plus total or 3 gigahertz plus per? No, there's no way it would be per. It'll be total. It would have to be, because that would be the processing unit basically, or part of the processing unit. 160 watt TPB. Did you mean TDP? I feel like it should be TDP, not TBP. Anyway, 160-bit or 192-bit bus with... Okay. Isn't that... No. I don't think that's... USB 3.2C. I could be wrong about that. With GDDR7, at least 32 GTs per second. I'm trying to make sure that these... units of measurement are actually correct, because like again that TBP, I'm pretty sure that's supposed to be TDP, but yeah, maybe I'm just getting something wrong here. Rasterization performance 3 times the PS5, ray tracing to be expected to be higher, triplet design, backwards compatibility with PS5 and PS4. That is huge. Okay, I think out of everything that I've just seen here, that is the biggest thing. Because it's easy to look at like the next generation of consoles and be like, there's no way they're going to bring forward PS4 games moving forward. It's just going to be backwards for PS5, if it's backwards at all. Because up until the PS4, or rather, I guess even including the PS4, until the PS5, I should say, PlayStation consoles have not... Okay, fine. I guess it's the PS3 that really ruined everything. Because the PS1 could play PS1 games. PS2 can play PS1 and PS2 games. PS3 could play PS1, PS2, and PS3 games, but then they drop support for PS2 games on later PS3 versions, and then the PS4 could not backwards compatibility anything, so PS5 is then backwards with PS4. Now the PS6 is going to be backwards with PS5 and PS4, so now at this point, surely now every console moving forward should be backwards compatible, because the PS3 dropped the PS2 backwards compatibility, and then with the PS4 we did not get any PS3 backwards compatibility, so it is what it is. And then this is like details around the potential handheld, which seems to be around roughly, from what I can tell, not necessarily half as powerful, but not quite there. And it generally does seem like if you're going for dual microphones, a touchscreen, and a USB-C video out, it definitely feels like it's going down the path of a portable PC. Haptic feedback, that is huge, I think, honestly. But then again, now that I think about it, the PlayStation Portal actually has that as well. So I guess I shouldn't be too surprised, all things considered. And especially with the price of the product, given where things are at the moment, I don't think I would ever be surprised to see if the, new PS6 cost like $1,000, and this portable device would maybe be closer to $700-800 in USD pricing. So I don't think I'd be too surprised about that being the pricing, but those are my thoughts. Here are some numbers, and let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year. And with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.